go. There's a few more. I'll tell you what, we'll get started since we are 1 minute past. So hi everybody, thank you so much for joining our session today, which is getting to concrete value with Copilot in not-for-profit. This is actually the second part of a 5-part webinar series. So that's lots of insight into how to use Copilot within NFP use cases, talking about agents, governance, all of that good stuff as well. Today we're going to be focusing on getting value within Microsoft 365 Copilot. In terms of questions, as we wait for more people to join us, please feel free to pop your questions, either use the Q&A window or you can use the chat function in this Teams meeting, and we'll be able to answer them as we go. Just to give you a quick introduction to your speakers for today. So my name is Kat. I'm going to be hosting the session. I work for CPS, so that's Corporate Project Solutions, just in case anyone gets us confused with any other CPS. I'm the head of AI. So we have an AI team with AI consultants, change managers, and developers who build out AI solutions for our customers. The last couple of years have been very busy, but very fun with the release of Copilot, which has been really, really exciting in terms of me and my team. I'm also an MVP, so what that means is I spend my spare time doing blogs and presentations, and I just kind of am a bit of a nerd when it comes to the technology. So that's a little bit about me. I'm also joined by Ha from Microsoft. Ha, let's just let you jump in there and give yourself an introduction.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ha Cole. I am the Chief AI Officer in a segment of Microsoft called Tech for Social Impact. And essentially, we work exclusively with charities, nonprofits globally. Also having a lot of fun. And thank you for having us today. Thank you for joining us.
Amazing. Wonderful. Thanks, Ha. Perfect. So let's get started. So I just wanted to give a couple of seconds on the slide to really just highlight who we are at CPS. So we are a Microsoft partner. We specialize in Microsoft technology only, and that is Copilot AI. So I manage the AI practice, but our expertise spans into security, productivity tools, Power Platform, business applications, and more. So anything to do with Microsoft. The reason why that's important for Copilot is because not only do we support with the rollout of M365 Copilot, but also the tech readiness and the governance and security around that as well. So we're kind of well-rounded to help support. We have all the relevant badges to say, yes, we can deliver AI and technology. All our consultants are certified. I wanted to highlight as well who we work with and some of the work that we've been doing with Microsoft and Ha and the team, which is around supporting charities on using AI. And you'll see some of the examples on my screen here, like Historic England and WWF, Save the Children. These are all customers where we have been working to support the rollout of Copilot. And now with a lot of these customers, we're actually looking at that next step, which is moving into agents and agentic AI, which is really exciting. So the reason I wanted to share this slide is I'm hopefully in a good position, hence me being involved in most of these projects, hopefully in a good position to share some of the insight from those engagements with you today in terms of use cases, approach, things that have worked well. We've been doing it for the last couple of years, and we have some really strong case studies with these customers as well. So just wanted to highlight our expertise when it comes to not-for-profit. Why are we qualified to speak to you about it today? Hopefully that kind of sheds some light on why. So in terms of what we're going to cover in today's session, and I've seen a few more people join, so please feel free to put any questions in the chat window and we can answer them as we go. We're going to cover a few things. First of all, Microsoft 365 Copilot. I'll give a little view just to make sure everybody's on the same page in terms of what product we're actually talking about. And we're going to focus on showing you some use cases that we have uncovered from our NFP customers when we're implementing Copilot and where some customers are starting to see value. What we're also going to highlight, and we'll show you the prompts as well, that some of these customers are using, which some of them actually, they can be quite advanced and sophisticated. So it's good to just kind of see what others are doing when it comes to Copilot. What we also want to share with you is a case study. So what's the ROI? How do you capture that ROI? And what's the best approach to actually start integrating Copilot within your organization? Has going to support as well in terms of what's the pre-work that you need to do, what's worked well with our other customers, and I'll talk a little bit about the ongoing actual adoption and deployment of it as well. So hopefully that's what you should get from today's session. It should be interesting for you, helpful, and we tried to make it interactive. So please feel free to just post a message or a comment question. And if you have a burning question, please feel free to unmute and ask as well. That's not a problem. Right, so let's get started. Today we're going to be talking about Microsoft 365 Copilot and how to get value out of it. Can I just do a quick poll before we get started? So Stella, if you can run that poll for me. We just want to ask if you have started deploying Microsoft 365 Copilot or not. Have you done a pilot? Have you started it? Do you plan to? Do you not plan to? So there should be a little poll that's going to pop up on your screen now with one easy question in terms of rolling it out. So if you can let us know, just so we get a little feel for the room. So about half are saying not so much. Some are saying yes to all employees. That's music to our ears. Starting with a pilot seems to be the most common one there. So and that's, to be fair, where most of our customers start. They usually start with a pilot. They get that ROI, they get the value, and then they start to roll out fully. No, but plan too soon. I did realize that there's no option in there to say, no, we're not going to. So everyone has to be on the scale of implementing it. But that's great. That really gives us a kind of a flavor of who's in the room. And so what I will do is I won't spend too much time talking about what Copilot is. I'm hoping that we're all kind of on the same page. I did just want to highlight the product that we're talking about and the architecture. So this may look like a scary slide, but I will just explain it in a way that I understand it. And it's essentially telling you how Copilot works. So Microsoft 365 Copilot is the Microsoft's AI solution. And it's embedded into your Microsoft app. So you get Copilot in Word, Copilot in Excel, Copilot in PowerPoint, and so on. And the reason why this is quite a powerful Copilot is because actually it can look at your Microsoft graph. So what that means is I can actually go into Copilot and ask it to, for example, write a job description for me for a fundraiser. And it will actually go into my Microsoft graph, which means it's going to look at my files in SharePoint, my emails, my Teams messages, the meetings I've been in, anything I've done in Microsoft 365 that I have permission to see. And it's going to craft me a response based on that information. So it's going to say, okay, great, based on this information, here's your job description for this fundraiser, as an example. The reason why this is important to highlight is because you'll see there's a big Microsoft 365 service boundary around this slide. That's Microsoft's commitment to security. So what that means is anything you put into Microsoft 365 Copilot is not used to train the OpenAI service that's powering Copilot, and nothing is shared externally either. Everything is within your own tenancy, and it adheres to all of your permissions, all of your security policies, everything that you have in place. So if you're using sensitivity labels or data loss prevention, or you've locked down your permissions in a certain way, Copilot will adhere to that as well. So it's the one where most of our customers are looking at. For those who said, no, but plan too soon or not too sure yet, sometimes the blockers for that is the concern around security, but actually there is a commitment there to ensure that it is safe and a secure tool to use. And that's something that we do with our customers to make sure that your kind of readiness in terms of the technology that you're using, the permissions that you have set. And there are tools from Microsoft that support things like restricting certain sites from SharePoint and so on. Hi, I can see you typing in the slide, but I don't know if you want to jump in or not. Feel free to interrupt at any time to add.
I
You
was
wanted to.
just going to say a couple of things that there's a lot more coming, and there was an announcement yesterday, so I was just going to stick the link into the IM window. The second part about security concern is also that if you don't have an answer, then people go and find the answers themselves. And some of our customers, we see that they have a lot of consumer grade, unsanctioned AI, and so there's a term that is kicking out there called shadow AI nowadays. And so there is that consideration as well. And it feels like doing nothing may no longer be an option.
Absolutely. So we have just been doing some interviews actually on AI and what would be the impact of removing Copilot for some of these people. And they've basically said we'd use ChatGPT or we would use a third party AI. Whatever the way, we would find a way to use AI. So we want to make sure that the AI that people are using is within the tenancy, it's secure, it's within Microsoft 365. But this kind of leads on to the next slide, which is you'll see that the process is here. It goes in, it looks at all of the files and the emails, and then it does a couple of checks. It makes sure it's humans can understand the language. It checks for any security policies that you've put in place, and then it provides that response to the end user. But actually, if I was to say, write a job description for a fundraiser, it's going to do that process in a couple of seconds, and it's going to draft a job description for me. If I then ask it a couple of minutes later to draft a job description for a fundraiser, it's going to do that whole process again. So actually, the two job descriptions might be slightly different because it's not a system that's doing the same thing over and over again. It's running this process. So it might find other things or something might be added that it wants to include. And so the response might be slightly different. The reason why that's important to know is because prompting is a technique that we train people on to use Copilot and get the best value out of it. So the more specific information you tell Copilot, the better it finds what you need and the better response you get from it. It's also important because it works very well with natural language. So what that means is the more natural I ask Copilot, the more natural of a response I'll get back. And that sounds very weird. The best advice is talk to Copilot like it's a person. And it sounds odd, but it honestly will get you the best response. So the reason why we focus on that prompting technique is because it can go in and look at everything. And if you don't give it specific information, it kind of will try and figure out what you mean, go into your kind of emails and your files, pull the response back, and it might not do what you're asking it to do because you haven't given it enough information. And that kind of leads on to this slide, which is all about prompting. So just a bit of hands up. Is everybody familiar with prompting? Prompting AI, or is anybody not familiar? You can feel free to give a little wave or raise a little hand if you're, yes, thumbs up. Yes, some hands up, wonderful. It feels like most people are familiar with prompting. The reason we're starting with this slide is when it comes to getting concrete value out of Copilot, what we found is a lot of the teams that we work with when we're doing a pilot, especially for those who've said, you're starting with a pilot, what you'll find in the first month or so is that people will use Copilot to summarize emails and to summarize large documents and to do some meeting minutes. Those are the three top things that people tend to use Copilot for in that first month. And that's fine. That will give you some initial time saving and it will give some productivity benefits. But actually, that real value is when we start getting more advanced and we start looking at things like analyzing data, comparing policies. We did a session with one of our customers, and it was their legal team. And they asked Copilot to analyze a meeting transcript where they had given, it was a legal officer, they were giving legal advice. And I compare that against our safeguarding policy to make sure that I've given correct advice that adheres to our policy. And so there's things like that where it's comparing different things. You just tend to start getting a bit more of that value, bit bigger time savings when it comes to using Copilot. So I won't go into the tips and tricks of prompting in too much detail. I guess what we wanted to get across was it's very important that we do training on this because you will find, and we've absolutely found it, where teams of even champions have said, oh yes, we're using Copilot really, really well. And it is just they're in emails summarizing their emails, which is still a good use, but actually there's so much more that we can get from it. So we wanted to show you that. We wanted to show you some of the more advanced prompts and some of the use cases that we have and some demos from some other customers that we've worked with. So let me move swiftly on because I realize it's 1:15, time flies. So what we'll do is we'll show you some demonstrations and show you some of that prompting. And this is where we'll talk about the approach later on, but that training that we do, the engagement with the teams who are using Copilot, the understanding the use cases and how they get benefit is really, all of those activities are really important to get that value. One thing that we don't recommend is giving the license out to someone and just seeing how it goes, because it will be, they'll click a button, it won't do what they want it to do because they haven't prompted correctly, they don't see value, and then they never look at it again and they say, oh no, it's rubbish, I don't want to use it. We really don't want to hinder adoption. So this is an example of a use case from another organization that we're working with on analyzing trends in an Excel spreadsheet. And in this particular process, this person worked in the grant management team, and they were looking to analyze, so they've got families who request help for vouchers. And they have all of the information that families fill out in Microsoft Forms, and that goes into an Excel spreadsheet. And it's a huge amount of information, a huge amount of data. And what we're looking at is actually using Copilot to analyze that big bit of Excel spreadsheet and tell me where what people are applying for, what regions have the highest demand for funding, all of the areas with the overlapping trends, how many people have applied for GP support in Wales, and those types of questions. And that better provides the insight into, okay, maybe we should focus our campaign planning on certain areas. So just being able to analyze that information is really powerful. But it requires a bit more of a prompt. It doesn't just, it's not a button, analyze this file. It's going to get you a very different prompt or a very different output versus a prompt like this. So you'll see this prompt actually has a lot more detail in it. It's got all of the prompt guidance that we usually teach people. It's got the context, the source, the format. You'll see I've been polite in here as well and said please and thank you, which I know that sounds weird, but the more positive you are and polite you are, the better response you get from Copilot. Because it mirrors your prompts, the response you get back will be polite and positive. So that's a quick tip if you weren't aware of that already. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you this in action. So, and the other thing to note is what we tend to find when we're doing a pilot, people don't use Copilot Chat. They just use Word or Outlook and miss, a really, really great capability within the app itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a browser. Now, this doesn't have to be the browser. You can access Copilot in Microsoft Teams Chat. You can access it if you've downloaded the app on your desktop, however you want to access the Copilot app. So you'll see here, I've just accessed it in the browser for my demo purpose. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Copilot to analyze this Excel spreadsheet. So I'm going to paste my prompt in here. So you'll see, let me just zoom in slightly. There we go. So I'm reviewing this month's grant applications. I need to identify the regions that have the highest demand for funding. Tell me the areas with the themes, the keywords, and any responses to support the analysis. Thanks. So I've added in a bit of information. I want to generate a report. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to reference the Excel spreadsheet. So if doesn't like my /, but that's fine. So what I'm going to do is I am just going to, give me 1 second, I'd rather. So if ever in doubt and you have a live demonstration that decides not to work for you, which always happens, and because it's signed me out, wonderful, we'll sign back in. If ever in doubt, just refresh and try again. And this happens when we're doing training. This happens when you're using Copilot, where sometimes actually it won't reference something, or you just need to give it a little kick. You can do by just giving it a little refresh. So let's give that a refresh and try again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reference, there we go, my file. And it's the grant assistance request Excel spreadsheet. So what you'll see is when I post this prompt in, it actually analyzes all the information in that spreadsheet. And that spreadsheet just has a whole load of rows from the families who have applied, where they've applied from, what they're asking for in terms of support, and the type of voucher that they're asking for as well. Instead of going into Excel and asking it to analyze it, I'm using Copilot and Chat. And that's because it can give me things like themes. It can look at trends. It can look at, analyzing risks within my Excel file, recommendations for, where to do my campaign management. So the analyzing aspect of it that I get is a lot more powerful. And funnily enough, I am showing you this, and Microsoft have just announced a research analyst agent. So you actually will have a pre-built agent that is built specifically for analyzing data. And we'll maybe share a link on that announcement, which is good fun. It just came out. So we'll likely use something like that in the future. But even just the out of the box M365 Copilot, just being able to use it in a different way like this in the chat is a lot more powerful instead of just, summarizing emails. And if I just show you a quick example of actually what that Excel spreadsheet is, you'll see it's just a whole bunch of rows of data within it. So you'll see the request, the location, the outcome, the type. And if you wanted to, you could go in and say to Copilot, analyze this data for me, and I could do it in Excel, but you would get a pivot table, you'd get, a formula, you would get a graph. It's a very Excel response. So just having that thinking outside the box and actually saying, okay, if I analyze it with Copilot Chat, actually it's a different type of analysis that you're getting. And the reason we're highlighting this is because this is where we can really make an impact. I mean, for this to be able to analyze that information and then say, okay, can you help me plan my next campaign based on this data, and actually help it to target where we should strategically, pull this funding in or where we should focus. That's really powerful. So that's why it's getting that concrete value is not just, given the license and testing it out. It's actually making sure that people are trained so they can look at things and use cases like this, which is what we've done with our customers. So you'll see here it's actually created a campaign based on that data. Here's the urgency, here's the areas, the type of support, here's what we should do in that area. So it's a lot more impactful. I'll pause there because I realize I've been talking for ages, and I just wanted to see if there were any questions on anything that I've covered so far. Please feel free to raise hand, post it in the chat, however you're comfortable doing it. I'll move swiftly on to the next one if not, but feel free to interrupt for questions. So that was one example. I'm conscious of time, so I'll just maybe give you another couple of quick ones before we move on to some of the approach and the case studies. So in this scenario, this is where we're working with a team for employment services with another not-for-profit organisation. And this team supports people getting back into work. So it could be people who have been homeless, who need support with things like writing cover letters or preparing for interviews. And that team actually were using Copilot in lots of different ways for those services to help support the service users that they're working with. So they've used Copilot to help to apply for roles, analyze CVs, draft cover letters, analyze interview feedback based on mock interviews, come up with questions and a whole bunch of other stuff as well. So let me show you a couple of examples there, and we can show you that there. I just see there's a question in the Q&A, so I just want to open that up first and just make sure we address that. So Jordan, I saw your question. So in this example, does the Excel spreadsheet need to be formatted correctly? So it doesn't. It doesn't need to be formatted. What we found, so this is going back to this example here. What we found is actually it works better with raw data. So it works a lot better if you actually take out the formatting and take out the tables and ask it to analyze the data. But what you will see, so my data here was raw, it doesn't have any formatting to it. If you try it and it's formatted in a table, there's lots of filters, and Copilot says, oh no, I can't analyze this file, just remove it all. And another thing to look at is the title of your columns as well. Just make sure your titles are very clear, because then it can actually see and analyze it better. So just make sure that they're not acronyms or they're not coded or anything like that. They're very clear in terms of what it is. So if that ever happens, just make sure, take out formatting, make sure your column names are clear. And it doesn't need to be in a table. It can just be like this, which is lists of information. So hopefully that helps. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to show you the employment services example. So in this case, we're going to look at this person's CV and we're going to ask Copilot to help us to draft a cover letter to help that service user. So I'm going to copy and paste this prompt, and what you'll see in here is we do have some of our prompt guidance. So that's things like context. I'm a supporting service user who's applying for jobs in retail, customer service roles. Can you check their CV and help me write a cover letter for them? This could be, I work in employment services and I'm supporting someone who's trying to get back into work. You can give different types of context. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to reference this person's CV. Now, this is not a real person, so don't worry. It is a made-up CV, but it gives you the idea of like the types of things that we can start using it for. You'll see here that it's gone in and it's drafted that cover letter for me. And you'll notice again that I've used the Copilot chat function. You can use Copilot in Word. There's not really a right or wrong answer. It's whatever one you prefer, essentially, in terms of the output. I tend to like using the chat functionality because I find it's more concise in terms of the output. When I ask it to do something in Word, it gives me a very Word response. So it will include things like introductions and conclusions and letterheads and things like that because it thinks I want a document. Whereas if I ask it in Copilot chat, it's more specific. So that's why I'm using this. So this is supporting that service user with writing cover letters, but they don't stop there. They actually use Copilot for this end-to-end process by actually saying, okay, great, thanks. Can you come up with 10 interview questions I can ask in a mock interview? So actually help me prepare for a mock interview that I'm going to do with this service user to support them. So you'll see here, it's given me some draft questions. And then taking that all the way through, one of the team members that we were speaking to said, actually, it's quite difficult. So we'll help them with interviews and we'll help them practice. But actually, giving them feedback is quite difficult because we have to sometimes be quite sensitive. And the feedback that we want to give is we want it to be constructive. There's teams that we work with who have like dyslexia and things like that and say, do you know what, just writing out the feedback from an interview is quite difficult. So what we do is we ask Copilot to, hey, can you provide me with constructive feedback on this interview to the candidate? I want you to be empathetic. And I'm going to @reference the interview transcript. I just seen a question come through. What's the difference would be for this scenario using the free version of Copilot? So the difference is this can look at your M365 information. So I can ask it to look at meetings that we've done. So that could be the interview that we've done here. So you'll see actually I've transcribed my interview and I've asked Copilot to go away and look at the transcript or look at the meeting. In the free version, you could go into the free version and ask it to come up with interview questions and list kind of the things that you want it to ask, and it'll still generate that content. But the M365 version actually allows you to look at your company data. That's the kind of big difference there. With the chat version, the free version, you can upload files, but there's a big limit on the size. So it's a very small file that you can upload and get it to analyze. Whereas the M365 version, it's fully integrated into your data. It also allows you to do that. Sorry, half everyone jump in there. It also allows you to do this in things like Word and Excel as well. So you'll see here it's given me a nice way to actually provide that candidate, that service user feedback in a way that's empathetic, and there's some strengths there, and that's based on the mock interview that we've done. So in terms of the end-to-end, the employment services team in this particular scenario using it to support the community. So that's a bigger impact again than just their personal productivity. It's actually impacting the people that they're helping and working with, which is really, really powerful. I'm just, let's look at the time, 32 minutes past, we're okay. The last one that I'll demo in this, just to show you the different use cases. This one was, again, using the web version and then asking that to create a template for Excel. And this is for someone who is actually creating a strategy based on, so this is an organization where they support with like nature reserves and endangered animals, and I won't say who they are, but you can kind of guess, make some guesses there. And this is where we're actually asking it to look at the web, pull in specific information to help me create a template in Excel to manage resources and timelines to actually get this initiative done and do this strategy. So let me show you what I mean. So what I'm going to do is, and you'll see this prompt again is a little bit more advanced as you start going through that maturity curve of Copilot. It's not just summarizing your kind of your files, but actually it's going in and looking at the web, being able to identify key sources and then turn that into a template and then go into Excel and put that into Excel. So there's a few different bits in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Copilot Chat. I'm going to start a new chat and I'm going to flip to the web. So this is where you can use something like the free version to complement the people who are using the M365 version. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste my prompt in here, which is I'm drafting a new strategy for our nature-based initiatives, suggest a few conceptual approaches to biodiversity and climate adaptation. What I'm also going to do in here is say, please provide a list of your sources. And I could even be more specific by saying things like make sure it's focused on the UK or a specific region, make sure you're just looking at these types of websites, make sure that you're only looking at things from the last 12 months. And again, that's where that maturity comes in, to be able to identify sources from the web and actually, recognize, okay, I need to ask Copilot to focus on these types of things to make sure that the information I'm getting is accurate. So you'll see here, this has gone into the web and it's pulled out some conceptual approaches. You can tell I definitely don't work in this type of organization, but this person found this example really useful. And it's pulled that information from the web, and I've asked it to provide me the sources, and it has. So you'll see here the websites that it's used, and I can check these, make sure I'm happy with the sources that it's used, and then I can continue with my prompt. What I'm then going to do is I'm going to ask Copilot to create a planning template for me within Excel. And again, I can continue with the web version. So I'm going to say, okay, thanks. Now, create a resource planning template for Excel, include these types of things. And what you'll see is, again, don't have to ask it in Excel necessarily, but actually it's creating that table in that format for me. So I can then start to maybe copy and paste that, start using it in Excel, but it's actually going from, those simple prompts into, we're going out and we're finding information from the web, and then we're turning that into a template for something else, whether that's a PowerPoint, an Excel spreadsheet, or a Word document format that we want to reuse. And that's really where that concrete value comes in, is those advanced prompts, where actually this process takes like 3 days for someone to sit and go through the internet and just capture all of that information for that strategy, and then figure out, okay, what do I want to do in terms of managing resources? That can just take a huge amount of time. So when we're starting to look at use cases for Copilot, we're looking at these types of things. It's analysing large bits of data with massive impact to the charity. It's being able to support, the communities that we're working with. It's being able to go and find information quickly, saving days and days of time. So that's kind of where we want to get to. So with that, we wanted to show you an example from a customer that we worked with, who is probably in a similar position to yourselves. For those who have said you're looking at a pilot, so we worked with the Salvation Army. We're still working with them. We started a project with them towards the end of last year, which was a M365 Copilot pilot. And we did that with 150 users, where we did a series of training, webinars, promptathons, guidance on using Copilot and getting the best out of it, drop-in sessions. And then the result of that was actually understanding their use cases and building out a business case to not only keep Copilot, but to increase it. And that's exactly what they did. They then said, yes, we see the return on investment, and so we're now going to start rolling that out further. And we're now working on the agents with Salvation Army. What you'll see here is we actually have a return on investment of 477%. And that's across a few things. So you'll see some of the KPIs that we looked at. So there's things like personal productivity is a big one. That's the time savings that people recognized. But also we actually uncovered other benefits. There were things like well-being, but there's reputation. So one scenario was they have a translator that they use, and they do lots of communication globally, like I'm sure a lot of you do as well. And some of their teams, they would have to delay kind of communication to other churches or core that they're working with, because their translator was fully booked or not available. But actually they can use Copilot to help translate emails and content into other languages. So the ability to then communicate quickly without having to delay things, improve the reputation of the organization, and as well as customer service. So improving the services to service users. I've said service too many times there, but like the employment services, homelessness, youth and children's, of social workers, using it for helping with care plans and meeting minutes. Just that bigger impact into the community as well is huge. There was also a reduction in things like using marketing agencies for content, because the teams could actually start to ask Copilot internally to help draft things like blogs and content, which reduced the need for those third-party agencies. So what you'll see with some of those savings is in the first, this was within the first 3 months of using Copilot. So it was those users who were moving those through the maturity curve from just, analyzing some or summarizing some emails, moving them through to creating content and analyzing content. So it's 1,200 hours across those users in the first 3 months, and which equated to a saving of just over £17,000, and that's within that first 3 months. This was based on a particular on cost, so it might be slightly different, but in terms of that hourly saving, not just the time saving, but also the impact to the users that they're engaged with, the reduction in some of those agencies, there's quite a huge saving there. And that customer has now again moved into rolling that out to more staff members and looking at agents as well. Again, please feel free to ask questions in the chat. So to get to that, we have some tips and tricks that we wanted to share with you. And the couple of things that have worked quite well across the customers that we've worked with to capture that ROI, to make sure that people are engaged, and to drive adoption. So champions are a great tool to help increase the use of your tools. The reason I say that is because people trust their colleagues, they don't trust strangers. So if I come in and I tell a social worker how to, do their job with AI, they don't really trust what I'm saying, but they will trust their colleague who's using AI for their meeting minutes, as an example. So using a champion is not just to scale, it's also to make sure that the people that we're working with, they believe what we're saying and they actually get value from learning from their colleagues as well. I've just seen a quick question, which I think is important, so I'll just pause. Sorry, I know it came for 10 minutes ago. Sorry about that, Poppy. So in terms of your question there around data privacy and security, you're absolutely right. So when it comes to things like ChatGPT, that is what we would consider a third-party AI tool that is not governed or managed by the organization. And if you're using kind of ChatGPT, not Copilot, again, we would recommend not putting sensitive information into that. And that's because it's not within your tenant, it's kind of public, it's not managed, and it's kind of outside of that security boundary that Microsoft have. When it comes to Copilot, you can input sensitive information because it's all within your tenancy. So Copilot will not show me things I don't have permission to see. I can't go in and ask it for salary information if I don't have access to that salary information, as an example. It adheres to everything that you've set up in SharePoint, in Outlook and Teams and all of your policies. We do have some information that we can share to support you, and Ha is going to talk a little bit about board sign-off in a second as well. So we'll come on to that in more detail. But yes, we can absolutely provide you with some collateral to support. So a couple of tips and tricks. One is the champions, and that's to scale, but also so people trust their colleagues. We also use those as success stories. So if you're using communication, we get a champion, a person, to say, I used it to help me with my service user, and here's what we did it, and it just goes down a lot better. This is the second point is quite important. Copilot is your co-pilot, it's not your pilot. One of the things that we always get in terms of resistance is, oh, well, it didn't do everything for me. It didn't read my mind and it didn't do this. And our response to that is good. It shouldn't. It's an assistant. It's going to do a first draft for you, but you're the informed human to make the decision about what you do with that information. If there's anything that's generated by AI, you are responsible. You should be checking it and reviewing it. And you should be also using Copilot for things that you can make decisions about. So if you're learning a subject, to ask Copilot to generate content about it, you want to have an idea about that subject to be able to understand if it's made it up or not, if that makes sense. So it's your assistant, it's your Copilot, not your pilot. It's not meant to do your job for you, and it's not meant to read your mind. Hopefully it won't be able to read our minds in the future, but that's important. So that messaging is important when it comes to working with teams. The other couple of key points to note is I've showed you some use cases, some very specific use cases, but actually we recommend not just sticking to one or two. For someone to get real value out of it, they should be using Copilot several times a day at minimum. So that is, you go in, you log in, first thing in the morning, you go into Copilot and say, oh, catch me up on all the things that I've missed. Then you're going to write an email, you get Copilot, can you help me coach how I can improve writing this email? Then you have to do a report. So you use Copilot to help me analyze this file and, put it into a report for me. So it's not just one or two big things. It actually is consistent throughout your day. You're using it constantly. And that's what we want to get people to, not just one or two examples. It's consistent. I also have another tip in here, which is to drive adoption. And that is doing things like prompt exercises. For those who maybe have Copilot, if you don't have Copilot, that's okay. But if you do have Copilot, the M365 version, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paste a prompt in the chat, and you can keep it and use it for when you do your pilot. And you could actually paste this into Copilot chat now if you wanted to, and actually see what it responds with. But doing exercises like a superhero prompt just gets people, it's fun. People like to find out about themselves. And so these types of things help to drive engagement as well. So the prompt that I've put in there in the chat window of this meeting is using the information you have about me, create a superhero persona with superpowers that you think I possess. And if you are trying it in the background, please feel free to post what your superhero name is. Sometimes they could be quite fun. I think mine was AI Innovator or something like that. But it's those types of exercises that just help to drive engagement. And we recommend doing that in a center of excellence, like a Microsoft team, where you're communicating that to users. So feel free to keep that one and try it out. We also recommend begin with simple prompts and then move to the complex ones. So yes, summarize emails, yes, go and find me information about my activities that I've missed. Start with those ones, but then we want to do prompt training on some of those bigger ones that I've shown you today. So that's really where we're starting to get that value. So I'll just do a couple of seconds on this one because I do want to hand over to Ha. I realise I've done most of the talking, so apologies for that. But actually, we did want to just highlight our approach when it comes to implementing Copilot or integrating it. And that is when it comes to buying Copilot, doing a trial, we always start with things like training and champions. And that is just because we want to get value straight away. We recommend doing workshops, which we do, to identify who should get a license. But actually, when you're giving out Copilot licenses, to make sure that they're not too flat. So not just one person sitting in a department on their own with a license, because people learn off each other. So we try to make sure that there's groups of different roles that can actually work together to figure out how to use Copilot best for them. So not trying to get, let's do one of each. No, let's try and have concentrated groups of teams, doing training with them, doing prompt training, and then all the way through to things like governance, security, and then moving into agents. So we have a kind of journey that we go on with a lot of our customers. And that's really where we get the success and get that kind of concrete value. But there is an important part, which some of you might be on that journey, is the bit before. How do you get sign off? Where do you start? How do you interact with the board? So I will hand over to Ha, who will jump in here and cover that piece.
Thank you, Kat. So what Kat just described is at the point you decide to adopt Copilot. And so these are the great steps to win hearts and minds and emphasize the hearts and minds. And that's what Kat has been consistent about in terms of engagement. But what we at Microsoft have learned is that AI is a business change journey. And so therefore it's important that we gain the support, the buy-in from all business stakeholders at board level, at the department head level, as well as at individual users. And the reason for doing that is so that they can help to prioritize resource and time for their team. And then you get proper support, and people can then be provided with the time to adopt Copilot. So to make it a little bit real, I'll share a few snippets from the Salvation Army journey. The CIO started to engage the board back in February of 2024. They pulled together a 1 day session for 120 leaders where they show the art of the possibles, and they got a level of buy-in from that day. It was quite good. They then try out a small number of Copilot, and the CIO openly said it didn't work. And the reason it didn't work is exactly what Kat said earlier. It's really hard to sit and do this thing on your own because we learn from each other. So in September, they then get the board approval to get some fund to actually do this thing at a bit of scale. And they started out with 150 users, and then the journey that Kat has shared with us. Part of engaging, the non-tech colleagues is also to make sure that there is good AI usage policies that fits within the value and the constraint of your organization as well. And then one last thing I would say would be reiterating what I mentioned slightly bit earlier on, in that Salvation Armies also found that they have something like 200 odd shadow AI, if you like, and they had to get all of that in control. And that was also part of engaging the board to signal, we need to do something, and we need to do it properly in a programmatic manner. All of these steps also run in parallel with what you're seeing on the screen as well, because we need to continue to engage the board and share the benefit that has been gained, and actually get them on the journey, as well as the various business head. And that's what the Salvation Army folk colleagues have done as well. Back to you, Kat.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Ha. Another good point to mention on here is a lot of these activities, we can get them funded by Microsoft, which is what we've done with a lot of our nonprofit customers, is that, beginning piece, let's help you get off the ground, let's do that training. That's something that CPS as a partner can utilize. It does depend on a criteria, so we can check for you if you did want to come and find out if you're eligible for any funding. But that's how a lot of our customers kind of get started, and we can utilize that as a Microsoft partner. And then you've got our 2 years of doing this with numerous different nonprofit organizations, all of that knowledge that we can just share with you through that funding as well. So please feel free to get in touch. And with that, we did want to say a big thank you for attending today's session. We have covered a lot. So we looked today at, some use cases for Copilot, some demonstrations. Hopefully you've got our kind of key messages on getting that concrete value. We do have a few other webinars coming up as well on the same theme for nonprofits, which is the next one on the 23rd of April, harnessing Copilot agents for nonprofits. So this is the next step, that we're doing with a lot of our customers now, extending into agents and processes and tasks. So please make sure you register for that on our website. And please follow us on LinkedIn, X or Twitter. And yes, please feel free to follow me. I'm on LinkedIn as well. Love to expand my network. But thank you very much for listening. I'll hang on if there's any questions, but if not, please feel free to jump off. Thank you again, and look forward to seeing you on the next one.
Yes, thank you.